Right. I just did that. Kindly let me know if it's working
Okay,
now.
perfect. All right, it should be working. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can
Okay,
see from my end.
great, amazing. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for making the time on a Saturday. This is really impressive to me. So really appreciate you making the time. So my name is Iman. I am the head of strategy and finance at Relief. And so just to give a quick overview of Relief's leadership. So Kenna is the CEO, Uzo is the chief technology officer at Relief. They're both Nigerian American. A couple of years ago in 2017, they moved back to Nigeria. They studied in the US, worked at Bain and Company, and for Kema, Uzo worked at GE Aviation on jet engines. Once they went back to Nigeria, they kind of toured the whole country to look at what were the big issues that were present in agriculture. And then they decided they saw the biggest gap in the palm oil value chain, and they decided to start Relief. And I've joined the company about 2 years ago now. Otherwise, our team, we have a wide range of team members with background in management consulting and investment banking, and from FMCG companies and financial services as well. Please, this is meant to be interactive, so stop me if you have any questions. So I'm going to present myself a bit. So I am Iman Dodo. I'm going to start on the left-hand side. I am a very, very proud citizen of Niger Republic, but also a citizen of France, but Niger first. So you see like my little picture here with my antelopes. I feel like this is the one very fun fact that I always come with. So I grew up with 12 antelopes in my house, which is kind of unusual. And so growing up in Niger, Niger is a very arid country in the Sahel, so a lot of droughts. In 2005, I was growing up, experienced the first droughts in the country, seeing the impact on children and everything. I started running food banks. So very early on, I saw the importance of agriculture, right, in people's health, in people's trajectory overall. Then I went on to study in the UK. So I studied international politics and economics at King's and UCL before joining Bain and Company, first in Nigeria and then in London, because I kind of wanted to experience different industries, but also understand to experience different type of business in agriculture. So I worked across different agri-businesses across different stages of the value chain with smallholder farmers, but also big companies. And then I realized that the huge gap as it comes to the smallholder farmer step of the value chain, but also the processing side of things, right? So there is a huge gap, I would say, in which 80% of smallholder farmers today produce our raw material, but it's very expensive and very unprofitable to aggregate those raw materials. So I decided to join Relief as head of strategy and finance, and I've been there since. And finally, on the right, I feel like the whole agriculture story ties up because I'm very passionate about health and wellness. So this is my picture after I run a marathon. So I run marathons. And so to me, agriculture is also a very good way to impact people on a very high scale, right? So in health and wellness, I'm also a personal trainer. You can help people one-on-one, but agriculture, you're really able to help people, the way people live and their health on a global level. I'm able to help my continent. So this also kind of crystallized why I wanted to do that. And then bottom picture, right, it's me thriving at Relief in front of a pile of palm nuts. So this is it about me. I'm going to move on because of time, but if you have any questions later, I'm happy to answer them. But overall, the story that I'm trying to tell here is that agriculture, food security is the issue of our generation, right? To me, you see the story about the drought in Niger, but that actually is going to continue happening and is going to continue being an issue across the continent with a lot of drought. You probably hear the locust crisis. So really the time is now or never to really act and innovate across the agricultural sector because it's really, really strategic. Without food, there is nothing. And so to me, agriculture is really the fundamental sector, if you wish, enabling everything else in this world. Because if you can't eat, then there is nothing else that you can do after that. So shifting on to relief now, what is the problem that relief is trying to solve? So Africa's food supply chain today can't keep up with the demand, right? Driven by population growth, making food very expensive. There are three main issues that we're looking at. The first one is that the yields are incredibly low. So if you are a market where you have a big population of food demand and the supply is not following the demand due to low yield, then your food prices will go up. Supply is low, demand is high, food prices go up. The second big issue in agriculture in Africa is that it's extremely costly to transport the agricultural outputs to processing sector, which are often located far from the farms. So it matters more in agriculture than other industries because the initial value of your product is lower, right? So let's use an example. If I were to use a metric ton of gold, and $100 logistics per ton, it wouldn't matter much because the initial value of the raw material is very high, right? So you still are able to remain profitable if you wish, even if you pay very high logistics costs. But that story is very different when you have to move a ton of grain or palm nuts that are very low value, that cost about like $50, for example, right? Or $100. The third issue is that the tools that we use are the tools that farmers uses today are very inefficient. So they use tools like, when you go to farms, they use tools like rocks, which reduce output efficiency, right? So a lot of farmers will have their children work on the processing side of things instead of going to school. And so today, like, what drives efficiency in your crop? It's the crop itself, the tool that you use, and a valuable community. If you use the wrong tool, you get less value from your commodity, which is a huge issue that we encounter today in the oil palm value chain. And so added to that, you wouldn't realize that oil palm is actually used everywhere in your everyday life, right? So when you wake up in the morning, you have oil palm in your toothbrush, from all products that use household products to bath and all of that. There is palm oil that is used in many food items. So whether it's sauces, desserts, ice cream, pet care products, biofuels, washing up products. So really like products, but also the supply of oil palm is not following. In Nigeria, there is a huge gap between the demand and the supply. And the government has also banned imports of oil palm. So that really creates a lot of pressure on the markets. And within these inefficient supply chains, then it means that the supply, again, is very low and the food prices increase, especially because you know how much we use oil palm, even in our everyday food in Africa. So these are really the issues that Relief is solving. So what Relief has done is we've actually created a new entry point into the Nigerian's fried-growing vegetable oil market. So there are I'll say there are two ways to make palm kernel oil. So very simply, what Relief does is Relief buys palm nuts from farmers and produces palm kernel oil, right? That palm kernel oil, so when you think about the fresh fruit bunch, when you get the fresh fruit branch from the tree, you'll remove the red part, right, to make the red palm oil that we use in our food in Africa. Once you remove that red palm oil, you have a palm, so the first one here, you have a palm nut that stays, and we can actually deshell, so remove the shell of these palm nuts to get a kernel, which you can then crush to make palm kernel oil, right? So there are two ways to enter this palm kernel oil market. So this palm kernel oil can then be sold, and it's used to make vegetable oil. So the vegetable oil that you buy in the supermarket to fry plantain, for example. That's why it's called vegetable oil, right? Because it can come from different sources of vegetables, whether it's palm kernel oil, whether it's refined red palm oil, whether it's soybean oil. And so there are two entry points into this market. You can either buy the palm nuts, deshelled, buy the palm nuts directly from farmers after they've milled the fresh fruit bunches, remove the red oil, in which case that's a higher profitability point. However, I've kind of mentioned, right? So aggregating those palm nuts from farmers is very, very complicated because you have many smallholder farmers that supply those raw material, and aggregating those volumes tend to be very expensive, especially because you have poor infrastructure and tolls. And then the second entry point into the market is that you can actually buy directly the palm kernels from the farmers or from merchants that tend to aggregate tend to buy from the farmers and aggregate those raw materials and sell it to you. And that is a lower profitability point, but that's actually a point at which most companies will enter because it's easier, right? So you can get more volumes from the merchants that you buy from, so you don't have to spend money and all the effort to go to the farmers and try to aggregate the palm nuts. So essentially what Relief does is that we have created a new entry point into the palm nuts stage, which is higher profitability, even though it's more complicated to operate at this stage because you have to deal with millions of farmers. So essentially what you need to just keep in mind is Relief sells palm kernel oil, right? The innovative aspect of our business model is the way we actually go about securing the raw material and processing processing our nuts to make palm kernel oil. So we've built supply chain technologies to do three things to make that supply chain more efficient. The first one is, given the issues that I've mentioned about having so many smallholder farmers that are split across the territory, you need to find a very efficient way to locate them, right? So there is the first technology that Relief has created is our site geospatial technology, which is a software that kind of maps all the different palm clusters in Nigeria so that we can very quickly identify where the crops are and where the smallholder farmers are, and where we can therefore deploy our machinery, our field agents, our forces to buy and crack the palm nuts. Then the second solution that Relief has created is an application called Salt. And that application is an application that we both use with farmers. So farmers can use Salt to let us know when they have raw material available, and they can also request a loan. So we give farmers working capital loans because most times farmers will have the raw material, they'll have the fresh fruit bunches on the trees, but they also need money to harvest those fresh fruit bunches during harvest season and all of that. So not only through Salt, farmers are able to let us know when they have raw material, which is super useful because you know where the raw material is and you can we go directly to the farmers to pick it up and pay for it. But yeah, so it's like farmers are kind of almost doing the job for you, right? They make your sourcing efforts more easier. And then the third step is once we have located the farms, we have our relationship with farmers, we know where the raw material is. We've created a deshelling technology that is called the Kraken, and this technology is a palm nut desheller, if you wish. So once we have that, we deploy that palm nut desheller to the communities. We're now working on a mobile Kraken. We deploy it to the communities closer to the farmers so you can actually start processing the raw material. Remember when I talked about low value raw material? So the closer to the farm gate you process, the better it is because you can add value to the raw material. So what the mobile Kraken enables us to do is that we actually go closer to the farmer in those communities. We do the first step processing of that raw material before we then aggregate it and carry it to the second step, the crushing step, where we make oil, because you can incur higher logistics costs once you've added more value to the raw material, essentially. And the difference between our Kraken and other local crackers, I'll say, is that a lot of farmers grow different varieties of palm, for example. So you have Dura and Tenera, and a lot of them cannot process simultaneously. Our Kraken is able to do that. It has higher purity levels and it's also 50 times faster. So what a farmer can do by hand, I think a farmer can do about 50 kilo a month. Our Kraken can do that in a day. So it really adds a lot of value to farmers because they can focus on their farming activities while we focus on the processing. And all of these three technologies make vegetable oil cheaper for the consumer. So just deep diving into each technology. So first, site enables us to identify the optimal processing locations. So what we do is we use a geospatial technology to identify and recognize and recommend the optimized farmer clusters to position our mobile tools like Kraken. So there's a lot of data that goes into salt. So whether it's the raw material prices, because as a company, you want to optimize the prices at which you buy your raw material, the soil data, the protected areas. So relief, we want to avoid the protected areas to avoid deforestation. So site also tells us, actually, this is a protected area, so you cannot source from this area. You have weather patterns, the different crop types and species, and also the route optimization. You need to be able to optimize the routes depending on the raw material, where you get the raw material, so that you're also able to optimize your logistics costs, essentially. And this tool has been developed in partnership with Stanford and other organizations like Solidaridad and PIND. Then moving to Salt, so that's the second tool that I've mentioned earlier. Salt powers our engagement with farmers to profitably buy their raw material. So we use a USSD technology to request, farmers use a USSD technology to request loans and notifiers of palm nuts availability. And that's technology that we use because a lot of farmers don't have smartphones. So by just dialing a USSD code on their feature phones, they're able to see all the options that we offer and let us know whether they have raw material or request a loan. And then on the other side, the agents can also use, so on the left-hand side, you see what the farmers see when they dial our code. And then on the right-hand side, you see what the agents can see with their smartphone. So they can process and track their purchases, they can monitor the loans that they've issued, and they can also use that to find new farmers. Any questions so far? No questions? All right. And essentially since 2021, that's when we started full-scale operations. We enable our farmers to increase their harvest by up to 5 times with our loans, right? So because they can access the loan, they can buy new equipment, or they can also finance their harvest. And overall, we've deployed more than 250K worth of loans in 2 years. And then finally, our Kraken. So as I've said, the Kraken, we deployed our first Kraken in 2021. Now we're moving to the second version of Kraken, which is a mobile Kraken. And essentially, it's an improved version of the first Kraken that can crush various varieties of palm nuts produced by smallholder farmers. Has higher purity than competitors, but also twice as profitable because of this higher quality that then translates into higher quality oil as the final raw material. So this is it on what Relief does. Before we move to the breakouts and the activities, are there any questions or any comments so far? Okay, there are a few comments in the chat. Okay. Please type in the chat if you have any question before we move on. Okay, great, no question. I assume this is very clear, so I'll move on. So now, is it Paul? I think we should go into the breakout rooms. I'm going to explain the activity very quickly. So essentially, Relief has 3 major challenges related to operating in agriculture in Africa. The first challenge is access to financing. The second one is our sourcing operation. So everything that has to do with buying raw material, using field agents rather to buy raw material, and getting that raw material to the factory, and then to processing centers rather. And then the third main challenge is deploying digital solutions for farmers, right? So there are two tasks that I would love for you to reflect on in groups. The first one is identify two reasons for each challenge in agriculture in Africa. So I want you to kind of interpret these three challenges and kind of reflect on why you think these challenges are happening, essentially. And then the second task is discussing how you adapt your business operations to solve these challenges. So I think we can probably do 10 minutes maybe breakout. 10 minutes to no, actually, let's make it 5 minutes. Let's make it quick. If we can just have a quick conversation and come up with a couple of ideas, and we can all brainstorm together, given time.
That's great.
I'm just
I think we have 20, excluding you and I, that would be about 25 devices. So let's say if we do 3 groups, that would be about 8 people per group. Is that okay? Or that's too large?
Yes, that's you say 3 groups or
3 groups.
8 people?
Probably
let's do 4 groups of 5. I feel like you'll make the conversations faster, maybe.
That's
and
okay.
Esther, thank you so much for your question. I will cover those questions in the next slide. I'll keep that in mind.
So breakouts of 4.
All right.
5.
Yeah. So let's take it until 40 past, right? We can give it 6 minutes.
Okay. Perfect. So I'm doing the breakout rooms now. Yeah. So after the discussion, they would nominate a leader, or is anybody allowed to do the submission?
Yes. Please nominate a leader to just speak about what your group came up with. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm doing that now.
Thank you. Hi, Bo. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, Paul. Okay, you're the one talking, but I'm actually in a breakout room, which is interesting.
Oh, maybe because you're the co-host. Let me see.
All right. Yes. There are 2 people in my room. They should probably maybe move to another room.
Oh, okay. Then let me move those 2, BIJ and Emmanuel Kojo, to a different room. That can be fun. I want to see which group has less people, and then that can be. Two, 1.
Okay, Paul, I think we should start bringing them back in a minute.
Okay, just
That works.
second. I want to send out a message that we are closing the groups in like a minute.
Sounds good. All right.
I think they are back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Well, I can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Perfect. So, you mind maybe you can resume? Yes, they are back to the main page.
Sounds good. Welcome back, everyone. So yes, if you can, we can probably take a minute for everyone to go through. We have about, four groups, right? 5 groups. So if we can each take
Yes,
a
4
minute.
groups. Yes.
Okay, great. So group 1, that's Bea, Bright, Ebenezer, Zubi. If you can go with your reflections, and go ahead. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please, if you're not able to speak, you can just write it in the comment section. But I'm sure you're about 4 or so maybe one person can volunteer and speak on behalf of the group. And then the others can support him or her in case the person misses a point or two. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the next group while group 1 gets the act together. So room 2, Emmanuel, Esther, Hilda, Asamaniwa, and Amati. Come. Do you want to share your thoughts about those challenges and what you'll do about them?
I can represent the group. So I don't know if other people experience this, but I was a little lost in the breakout session. I wasn't sure if I was chatting with my group members or everyone else on Zoom. But
it's okay. Just you know the question. Happy. It's an open ground, right? So, what do you think about the challenges and how would you go about solving them?
I can talk about task one. So I thought that so the reason why it's challenging for the reason why access to finance is a major challenge is because your conventional system that offers loans and things consider agriculture a risky terrain because it's susceptible to things like drought, excessive rainfall and the like. And then also, the traditional farmers are smallholder farmers, and most of them too are not financially literate. I feel like a lot of it is subsistence farming. So it's hard to find, well, that's what I think. And maybe too, a lot of people are not really attracted to the agriculture field. So a lot of people are not even doing these operations for you to source them. And then deploying digital solutions for farmers. I mean, I know some companies that have been able to access farmers through this with just the basic. It doesn't necessarily have to be a smartphone, but I also thought that maybe because maybe majority of your conventional farmers do not have smartphone, it's hard for that. And also they too on their end are not as literate with digital stuff.
Yeah. This is really good. These are really good ideas. And I feel like you've captured some of it around digital literacy being an issue. So making it complicated to deploy loans, but also people not being super interested in agriculture. So these are really good ones. On the access to capital one, it's more from the company's perspective rather than the farmer. So we're going to talk about that in a bit. So thank you so much for your input. Super useful. Anyone else? Maybe we can hear from one more group 4, group 5, before we proceed.
I will speak for group 5 just a little bit at this point. One of the things that were mentioned in terms of digital solutions was to create training centers, just to educate the farmers a bit more as to what kind of solutions are there, what kind of ideas can they work around to be able to be more efficient and grow more. And my perspective on that is it can equally build onto all the three in terms of you as a farmer don't necessarily need to know only farming, but you need to understand those other aspects that help you a bit more about the operations and not just the labor aspect, a bit more about the finance. And not just let me go to quick credit and then get some 3,000 from them, but actually how to invest in all of that so that they are more informed and make better decisions for themselves. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really good, Charles. Thank you for that input. And it is very true. I'll walk through that in a bit. Educating the farmers and really raising awareness and building that trust is very, very critical, right? Because the farmers just need to trust that you have their best interests in mind before they can even be incentivized to use your solutions. Because a lot of farmers don't have interest into learning like new digital solutions. They see that as a challenge, really. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great. So I'll proceed. Thank you so much for your input. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. Okay, Calvin, you have your hand raised. Do you want to go ahead before we close?
Yeah, a quick one. I just wanted to add on the access to finance challenge. I think there might be available financing, but people don't see the impact of the agricultural space and what some businesses are doing. And so to bridge that gap, if people see the impact, they would be more informed and will be able to put their monies into such businesses in form of debt or equity.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Absolutely. So you're talking about it here from differently from your two project mates, I'll say. From you're talking about it from a company's perspective, right? Rather than a farmer's perspective. And this is actually what I wanted to touch on. So that's a really great one.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. So thank you everyone for this input. So let me just go through into a bit more detail what challenges Relief specifically faces on these three, right? Because really these are the three pillars to our operations. The first one is access to financing. So there are two sides of financing from a company's perspective. The first one is accessing the working capital, right? To be able to run your business. What is working capital? Basically having the money to be able to buy your palm nuts from farmers, transform them, sell your oil to customers. So these are basically the money that you're turning around, right? That's what you call working capital. And a lot of times in Africa, what companies will do is that they will take a loan or like working capital facilities to run their business. And so the way they make money, if you wish, is so these banks will ask for interest rate, but companies need to be profitable to be able to pay for those interest rates. So they'll use some of their profit to pay interest and then keep the rest. So that's how it works. And so the big issue with this working capital is that for small businesses, most of the banks that you know would actually, they have some really terms that are very restricting for small businesses. So for example, they'll ask you for like some huge asset base, or they'll ask you for some big guarantees or some big like sums of money that you have to block at the bank as security. So a lot of the traditional banks and the offers of working capital are very, very restricting. And that is a huge issue for small businesses in general in Africa, but also specifically in agriculture. Because someone mentioned that, there is a bit more risk associated to it with droughts and all of that. Then the second aspect to raising money is raising money from equity. So Calvin, very well done. So you mentioned equity and debt. So the first aspect that I mentioned is kind of the debt aspect that you touched on. And then the other aspect is equity, right? And why do businesses need to raise equity? Again, it's one way to do it. It doesn't have to be, it is definitely not the only way. But usually like businesses will raise equity to fund some research and development that they're doing. So for example, for us, we are currently doing some R&D around the mobile Kraken and our Kraken. We're constantly trying to improve the technology. And even if the business is profitable, it's really challenging to fuel that research and development in the speed that you want it to be without raising external money, right? So that's what equity will come in, usually in the forms of venture capital. And the issue in African agriculture is that a lot of venture capital funds they tend to want really quick returns and companies with low asset base. And in agriculture, these two conditions are not fulfilled, right? Agriculture is something that works over the long term, but also it has a lot of assets. So there's a lot of machinery and all of that you are operating and using in food processing specifically. So it's very challenging for agriculture companies to raise money. Then moving on to the sourcing operations, there are three main issues that Relief encounters. The first one is the theft of raw material across the sourcing process, right? You'll be surprised that it's a huge issue. So the way we operate is we use field agents within farming communities that will buy the raw material. They build relationships with the communities and they will tend to buy the raw material on behalf of the company. And a lot of the things that we've mentioned, a lot of the challenges that we've had is that these field agents will either steal some of the raw material, or sometimes they will take the money to assume that they will buy some amount of raw material that they wouldn't have bought. So for example, they'll take the money for 1 ton and they'll only bring 500 kilos, right? And because those smallholder farmers are very disaggregated, it's very, very challenging to track where your piles are at each time because they're so spread over the territory. The second issue is poor infrastructure, leading to high logistics costs. So it's very well connected to what I've mentioned, right, about smallholder farmers being a bit everywhere. And so you need to be able to optimize your routes and the aggregation points. Otherwise, it becomes very expensive and you need a lot of trucks and a lot of manpower to move your raw material. And then finally, relating to the logistics is delay in raw material delivery, which slow down your operations. Obviously, without the palm nuts, you're not able to operate your factory, and you're therefore not able to make your oil. And then finally, moving to the farmer engagement. So the big issue the three of you have mentioned is around the poor digital infrastructure, limited phone penetration, and low digital literacy that limits farmers' ability to deploy, that limits our ability to deploy digital solutions to farmers. So we've had to be very creative and very innovative about the way we engage with farmers to be able to push those technologies that eventually make your supply chain more efficient. So in the final couple of minutes, I'll touch on what Relief has done for each of those challenges, just so that it may inspire you, as you think about your careers in agriculture or some of the issues as you start your career in the sector. So on the access to financing point, we've had to be creative about the working capital facilities that we raise, right? So there are a lot of facilities today, like that tends to be startups that offer raising working capital for smaller businesses. The challenge still is that you have very, very high interest rates. So the interest rates are even higher than what you'll get in a regular bank. But most of these working capital facilities will tend to be like unsecured. So these companies will not ask you for much guarantee, right? Which kind of justifies the high interest rate because the risk that they're incurring is higher. And then you also need to be a bit more creative, maybe about some of the facilities that we've used is like invoice discounting, where you may have a lower interest rate, but a working capital provider will discount each of the invoice for your customers. So they'll want to justify from your customers. Once you have the invoice, the customer says, hey, I'm buying 1 ton of oil from Relief. You go to the financier, they give you the money in advance, and then as soon as you're paid by the customer, you pay the financier back. So it's really important to be super creative given the infrastructure and the offering that is available. On the equity side of things, there are two things. What has been very, very critical for us is raising from investors that share the long-term vision for African agriculture, right? You can't really go to investors that don't really understand the agriculture sector or don't have that long-term vision. You can't really go to investors that would tend to, let's say, invest in fintech, for example, because, fintech is very sexy at the moment, and a lot of investors that will invest in fintech may not have the same expectations for agriculture, and they wouldn't invest because really, like, the industries are very different. And then the final thing is focusing on profitability with strong unit economics. A lot of the mistakes that many businesses make is that when you go to raise equity, a lot of these venture capital will ask you to grow, right? You need to grow very quickly because they want to kind of see, okay, in a couple of years, the multiples of the revenue of the companies have grown, so you need to grow, and therefore this is the valuation at which they can sell their shares in the company. But that means that a lot of times businesses will disregard profitability until later on, but there is a point at which it catches up because your investors would start demanding that you're profitable because otherwise you're just burning money. So it's really important to focus on good unit economics from the get-go to make the business more attractive in an industry that is already very challenging to raise money in. Any questions on that before I move to the last two? Okay, no questions. So on the sourcing operations, okay, Asa Maniwa, do you have a question?
Oh, I just had a question on, like I would like you to elaborate on core digital infrastructure, what you meant about that, in terms of the
About
challenges. If you
okay,
spoke,
okay.
yeah,
Let's see.
on the
Okay, for digital infrastructure, yes. So sometimes that's more around like the telecommunication tower, right? So for example, if you want to be using solutions that require farmers to have internet, you need like some phone towers, like those MTN or whatever towers in the villages, so that farmers can even have signal and internet connection, right? So that's what I mean by poor digital infrastructure, is that in Africa, this is a huge issue. You don't really yet have that infrastructure in remote areas, which means that a lot of the traditional apps, as you know it, cannot be deployed efficiently to farmers, because even if you have this amazing app and your farmer is using it, they won't be able to use it because there's no internet, right? If you're using a full, like fully like developed and advanced app that require a lot of like data and a lot of bandwidth, network, and all of that. So that's what I mean by the digital infrastructure is not yet fully accessible and implemented the same way that it is in cities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Great. So on the sourcing side of things, what we've done to solve some of the challenges is direct purchasing. That's been a really big one. At first, Relief used a lot of this field agent system, but we're slowly shifting to a direct purchasing system, so that you're kind of removing, if you wish, the intermediaries, and it's reducing the risk to your operations, the risk of theft and all of that. So what we're doing is incentivizing the farmers to bring their own raw material to the factory, by giving them some sort of loyalty points and incentivizing them, encouraging them to bring the raw material and getting paid for that on the stage, on the spot rather. And then the second big thing is for the areas in which we use field agents. So field agents are still very important, right? Because most times they're part of the community. They kind of help us build trust with farmers. So what we do is we use an incentive-based model with them. So let's say, if you are able to source some raw material, but there is little weight variance between the farm gate and the factory, then you kind of get some sort of bonus. So you have to incentivize them to reduce that level of theft. And then finally, it's really important to have a strong enforcement and inventory processes, right? Again, very challenging because you have raw material that you're buying a bit everywhere in very little volumes. So being able to have those strong inventory processes and strong tracking. So for example, when you buy from a farmer, your finance team will know this is what we've spent to buy this raw material. This is where the pile is. This is the time at which the pile has arrived at the factory. So you're able to kind of have this really strong audit process. That's very important. And then finally, on the farmer engagement, very big one. There are a couple of things that we've done. On your point, Asan Maniwa, about the digital infrastructure. So it's really what Relief has done is partnering with other service providers, right, that have infrastructure in place. So most times there are two ways rather to develop to push those solutions. You can either put your own towers and own infrastructure in place, which is very expensive and time consuming, or you can partner with other providers that have some sort of infrastructure in place, which is why we actually use a USSD system. And I'll get back to your question now, Esther. We use a USSD system that doesn't require much, right? The farmers can use that with their feature phone. They don't need any smartphone. So very easy and not too challenging, even if there's not enough signal or network within the place. And so, so the second thing that we did is creating hybrid solutions. So you can't completely ask farmers to be completely digital, right? What we've done is we have a hybrid model in which the field agents visit our farmers very often. So they're able to go to farmers to answer any questions, because farmers still need that hand holding, if you wish. They still need that support and still need to know that there is someone that they can reach out to in case they have any issue. And that even build trust and make them a bit comfortable rather to use that technology, because they know that if there is an issue, they can reach out to people. And so that's the answer to your question, Esther, is really creating that hybrid solution, right? You can't just push a solution, a digital solution, and just leave them. You have to have field agents, and we have call centers as well that they can call to ask any questions or let us know directly if they don't really want to use a USSD, they can't use it. They call the call centers to let us know when they have raw material. So knowing that they have those alternative solutions and human interaction is really important to even intensify and encourage them to try and use the digital solutions. Then, so there are two more things, is subsidizing and financing phones and initial digitization costs. Something that we've noticed is that a lot of farmers don't have phones. So what we've done is we've given some loans to farmers to buy phones that they can reimburse in raw material. And also a lot of times farmers want to deal with cash because they don't want to pay POS charges. And so upfront, when you start a business in ag and when you're operating, it's really important to make those investments to get farmers where you want them to be, right? So if POS charges are a huge challenge to them accepting those digital solutions, then as a business, you need to look at how you can lower that barrier to entry. And then finally, I've mentioned the call centers again. So it's addressing their concerns in local languages, right? So we have agents and call center officers that farmers can call in local languages or English, whatever they want, that they can chat to. And these call centers officers are always the same. So farmers are also able to build trust and relationship with them. So this is it for me, Esther. I don't know, I hope I've answered your question about USSD. I'll go through the final comments, but if in the meantime, if there's any other question or any reaction, any ideas, very, very open to answer them.
Thank you very much, Imen. I think we have our second speaker also on the call. So kindly make it brief, and then to the youth, if you want to ask any question or make any contribution, kindly make it brief. So in a minute or two, we can give him the opportunity to also start this session. Okay.
And yes, Theophilus, very good point. Yeah, data collection is also a huge issue. And so one thing that is good, I'll say a competitive advantage of Relief is that we're able to collect that data, right, through SALT. So you kind of know how farmers behave, what the pricing trends are, where the crops grow and all of that with our site and SALT technologies. The issue is that takes time, right? That process takes time. It can take years to build those databases. And to your point, today we don't have readily available databases. So it will become a competitive advantage moving forward. But right now, yes, that is a challenge. Great. Conscious of time, that is it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that was useful to kind of let you know, kind of present what is possible and what is being done in the processing state. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Imen, for spending your weekend and sharing these insights with us. We are super grateful.
Okay.
We'll share the recording with you as well, and have an amazing weekend. Thank you. Yes.
Sounds good. Bye.
Yes. Hi, guys. We have Jamie from Sankofa with us. He's going to take the second part of the session. I'm sure some of you have seen Sankofa snacks, plantain chips on a couple of your favorite supermarkets. So he's here to talk to us about how his experience has been, and you can ask him questions as well. And it's going to be very interactive. So Jamie, welcome, and please you may start.
Hi, Paul. Yeah. Hi, Paul. How you doing? Hello, everybody.
I'm doing great.
Hope you guys are doing well. Paul, so is the floor mine now, essentially?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, cool. So guys, hi again. Thanks for having me. I'm going to make this as casual as possible. It's not going to be a presentation. What I'm going to do is I'll just tell a bit about myself, about the company, and I'm just going to go at it as a sort of story format. I'll just be discussing with you guys. You'll be able to draw some nuggets on how I approached certain things, how you guys can approach certain things in given situations. But I'm not going to sort of share or break down a science per se. So it'll be as interactive as possible. So I'll jump right into it. I'll tell you guys who I am first of all, a little bit about me, and then who and what Sankofa is, and why we exist, right? So who I am, my name is
Hi, Jamie.
Salib.
Sorry, is it possible to see you? That's if you're comfortable. If not, yes, then we can just proceed.
I am not in the best situation to come on camera. 1 second, let me just reposition myself.
Okay, that's okay. For those who haven't seen you before, it might be
sure,
cool, but otherwise,
I thought my profile picture was.
I think your microphone is muted. Sorry. No, we can't hear you.
No, you can't hear me. Yeah, I was just so Paul. I was saying that when I put the phone down to use the camera, the microphone gets blocked. So.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I mean, yeah, just temporary. I think they've seen you now. You can switch to a more comfortable, yes, and then.
Okay, so let me jump back in. So, who am I? My name is Jamie Salibi. I'm the founder of Sankofa Snacks. In case you're wondering where I'm from, I'm Ghanaian. I grew up here. I was raised here. My mother is from Ghana. My dad is half Liberian, half Lebanese, but I grew up here all my life. I speak Ga very fluently. My tree is a bit 2x4, but it's not bad. Grew up here all my life, went to high school. When I was done with high school, I moved to the US for university. I was there for 4 years. After I finished that, I worked for a natural personal care company. So basically they make skincare products, hair care products. They manufacture, they market, they sell. So I was executive assistant to the CEO there for 3 years. I always say I served a lot of tea and coffee, but I also saw how the business was run. I was on copy for a lot of emails. I saw the kind of decisions they were making. So it was very helpful before I started. I am an avid lover of food and beverage. I love how things are made. I like to cook. So it is from that passion that I was always leaning into manufacturing. It was always going to be food and beverage for me, and I always wanted to do something in manufacturing. I like the idea of creating things. I'm not an engineer. I studied political science, so you don't have to be an engineer, but you do have to put on your engineering hat when you decide to go into that space, of course. Yeah, as I was saying, I was in New York for 3 years and decided to move back to start Sankofa. And Sankofa is really, I'm segueing a bit into what Sankofa is. We are a premium snack manufacturing company based here. And what we do is we produce and share creative, authentic snacking experiences that are inspired by and that celebrate what we call global Black food culture. So if you think about global Black food culture, that means anything from Africa or anywhere in the world that our communities are formed, right? So we have Black communities in the Caribbean, we have them in South and Central America, wherever it is. For us, we want to be able to create products that tell a story around our flavors, our recipes, and that shared culture that we have in some respects, and also that is coming about now. Now there's a bit of a global Black community forming with whether it's the diaspora, the continent, Pan-Africanism. there's a level of that, maybe early days, but there's something very powerful happening in that space, right? So we basically produce and share creative, authentic snacking experiences that celebrate those rich flavors and ingredients, all at the same time saying, you know, we are on a mission to champion a more equitable and sustainable food system, right? And how do we do that? For us is 3 pillars primarily. We've got the support that we provide to the local farmers here that we work with. We are trying to be as intentional as possible to eventually provide them trainings in climate smart practices, best practices, provide consistent offtake for them and income. As the business grows, the impact we can have in that space also grows. So that's the first pillar. The second is the fact that we manufacture locally. So we don't simply extract, you know, raw material and send it somewhere else for it to be done. We're manufacturing here, which gives us the chance to provide some youth capacity building. We have a very young team in best manufacturing practices and an entrepreneurial environment with some innovation. I think is a very powerful sort of impact point that we are also trying to contribute to. And finally, last but not least, just championing Black food culture, right? Telling that story, which hasn't been properly told, right? So that's a bit about who Sankofa is. What I'll do now is segue a bit into why we exist, right? And how this sort of came about. And really this came about, I mean, I like I said, I was always going to lean into food and beverage. I'd always thought about a whole bunch of ideas. But while I was in the States, what really dawned on me was, you know, the realization of the narrative that the world had created for us and how we were also accepting that narrative, right? Which is specifically how everything we experience, everything that's modern, basically has to be Western, right? And it's anchored in Western culture, right? We weren't really seeing innovation that was anchored or that was derived from African or Black culture per se, right? We see that quite a bit in fashion, we see that in music, but a lot of other spaces, not so much, right? That's when we still have that mentality of seeing something very special and you're like, you know, someone who's saying, you know, like they can create all these amazing things, right? And those things have an impact on us and our ability to develop. So for me, I think this is one of the key whys in why we decided to innovate with food, right? And that's one of the spaces I think we haven't done as much work in. It's lagging a bit. Now we are seeing some changes happening in the food space. We are seeing young chefs highlighting local ingredients and recipes in new ways, many of which are part of GFM, right? But we are now seeing the food space open up in a very interesting way, right? And really that's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to change that narrative and to also let us see and experience our modern day lives in some new ways and in some innovative ways as well, right? That also gives us the chance to engage the rest of the world, right? If we are making products that are always traditional, they're always rustic, there's something special about it, there's something nostalgic, but it doesn't really give us the legs to engage the rest of the world and even engage our own selves here in certain ways, right? When you think about all the products that we like, traditional products, you know, it's very hard to find a innovated version of it, you know. So that's really why we lean into the space that we do now and how we do what we do. Just really to share our culture in a modern light. And the possibilities there are endless right now. I mean, they are absolutely endless as we move forward. I think that's one of the most exciting things in the food space. The rest of the world has seen it. I think even Asia has seen that, where they are seeing innovation in traditional products, how they are packaged, how they are presented, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a massive opportunity for us here as well. Both for Ghana, I think for the continent, I think for the said global Black community that I think is over the next 10 years going to really come together. I know some people are a bit skeptical about it, but I think it's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So you should also be positioning yourself to take that opportunity. Yeah, and I think the other big piece around the why is really just demonstrating to ourselves and demonstrating to the world that we can make best-in-class products, we can make best-in-class systems and businesses here, right? So that's really the crux of the why we exist, I would say. So I don't know if there are any questions so far on that. I'll carry on into the next stage. If not, you guys can think through questions and you can always ask me after the next part of it, right? So Paul, you can, I guess if there are any questions so far, I'll give you guys a few seconds to ask. If not, I'll carry on.
Oh, I have a question.
Sure.
Hello.
Hi, I'm here.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, what kind of courses did you take to enrich your understanding in engineering, or how did you build that muscle?
Got it. I took no courses in engineering. I'm not a fan of math. I didn't enjoy math at all in school. I enjoyed sciences a bit, but not so much. In college, I literally took poli-sci and I minored in economics, right? So no actual engineering background. All I really did was just look into and research how things are made, and when you put on that engineering hat, so to speak, you just start thinking a bit methodologically. I don't know if the brofo is coming, but you know what I mean, right? Thinking through method as to how you structure things and building, right? The concept of starting a business at the end of the day is building. You're putting blocks together. So if you take everything step by step, you're able to get through it. And I think just researching, using Google a lot, that was a critical tool in everything that I did. And you'll find all the answers. And for me, if it's something that I'm interested in, it's extremely engaging. And you realize that if you weren't into science in school, as you're thinking about it in a real life sort of setting or to execute something, it becomes much more enjoyable and easier to understand. So who knows, I might have been an engineer if the way they teach in school was different, right? But that's really how I exercised that muscle, so to speak, if that answers the question.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So nobody here, if you are not an engineer, if you didn't study a particular science, it does not mean you cannot get into understanding that space for the purposes of starting a business or building a business in that space. Not at all. You will need engineers eventually, but it does not stop you from engaging the space. Okay. Okay. Are there any more questions, or should I carry on?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you have any questions whilst he's speaking, you can put them in the comment section, and then you go through them and address them so that you don't feel like you need to pause in here. Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing I'll do is I'll just give you guys a bit of a story of the process of starting the business, sort of the ideating and some of the thinking behind those building blocks, so to speak. So I mean, when I started off, I had a whole list of ideas. I was still working at my old job. A whole bunch of ideas in food and beverage. I was looking at coconut water. I was looking at some interesting snack bars with ingredients, plantain chips, a lot of local snacks that either we could just represent them with different packaging, make them shelf stable, or we could actually do something very unique with, right? So I just had a list of all of those ideas and I looked at them and decided, which of them is relatively cost effective to execute to start. It's not a overly complicated process. And it's also a universally understood product, something that is not now I'm coming to explain all the ingredients that go in and moringa this and that. I mean, not to take away from any such thing, but I thought to start off, it should be something everybody can understand. So I went with plantain chips. At the end of the day, I always say it's a chip. Everybody loves a chip. Everybody loves crunch. And we also like flavor, right? So the logic was, well, we enjoy flavored chips and crisps on different substrates. Why not use a locally sourced substrate or snack that we really like and love and add flavor concepts to it? So once I had the product, in mind, then I started thinking about the product and its features, right? That was the first thing I did. So for me, thinking about the product and the features, I thought, okay, it was something that was crispy. Crispiness was a key element on the features. Flavor was a critical USP around it. And then shelf stability was a very big one. So, and the fourth piece is accessibility, right? And accessibility and shelf stableness actually come together. I think anybody that wants to go into product is going to have to think about shelf stability. I think that is one of the things that limits our ability to scale, our ability to export, to make products, really have legs to go wider, right? When you have limited shelf stability. So I had all those four elements. I dug into each of them and what is the makeup or what's important around it. So crispiness, I know the thickness of the chip, how long we fry it for, how well we keep it, the oil quality, those are the things that go into the crispiness. I just did research, right? It's a combination of my own research at home, just making chips myself, speaking to some hawkers that also make plantain chips. I got a lot of tips from there. And then combining that with research online, right? You can just Google, chip manufacturing and chip frying process in a manufacturing setting. All the information is out there, right? And you do that research. Then the next thing was the flavor profiles and how flavoring happens, So I did some research on that as well, watched some videos. And as I was thinking through flavor concepts, I was thinking, what profiles do we love here? What profiles and what profiles are the consumer familiar with? What profiles can tell an authentic story, but also are flavors that can be universally enjoyed, right? So chicken ginger yassa, one of our flavors. How did that come about? It's a very popular Senegalese food and Francophone food, which also has elements of flavors we like to cook with ginger and garlic. We love seasoning our meats with ginger and garlic. So I figured, that would be if one of the flagships or one of the things to start with. There's a bit of lemon in there, which is what we don't cook so much with here. Sweet chili jollof, how did we come up with sweet chili jollof, which is our version of jollof, right? It's the profile, so tomato base, bell peppers, onions. You start thinking of the profiles that will go into that jollof type flavor profile. Remember, it's not supposed to always be exact. It's just supposed to remind people of that meal and that experience, and also just excites them to look into it. If it's somebody that hasn't tried it before, when they try it and they're intrigued, then they will go and look at recipes, or they will engage that recipe or that type of food even more. So that was how I was thinking through flavors, looking at what the market would like, what flavors are traditionally very popular that we cook with, and how can we create something new and put a spin on it. And what I did there is reach out to a flavor technician, and you work with them through it. I spent about a year working through that. That is where your soft skills will come into play, right? If you're a startup business, you're not a big organization, you're going to ask, probably a big company to help you develop something. You just have to have some good soft skills in terms of conversation so that they take you seriously. And eventually you'll find the right supplier that wants to help you. The one thing you need to remember is a lot of businesses are hungry. They are searching for customers, as much revenue as they can get. So if you find the right size business, it might take some time. A lot of rejections might come along the way, but you will find somebody that believes in what it is you're trying to do, or simply just wants the opportunity, right? They want the opportunity to take on a new client because they never know. I think for us, what was exciting for the flavor tech and the company we worked with was some of the uniqueness in the flavor concepts that we were bringing. So they were excited for their team to also try it, right? So I spent about a year getting flavors, testing them while I was still working my previous job, and then landed on the flavor concept.
Hello, I think Jamie's line dropped. Can anybody hear him? Or is it just me?
I think I was on mute. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so where did I drop off? Okay, I'll backtrack a little bit. So I think I was just done with flavors. I was talking about the next thing, which was shelf stability. All right. So that was the next key parameter or feature that I had to think about. I wanted a shelf stable product. And so I started doing research. You research, what are the things that go into making a product shelf stable, a product like plantain chips, right? So the packaging was one, right? You get beautiful packaging, but at the end of the day, the other purpose of the packaging is to keep the product integrity well, keep it hygienic, keep it safe, and also give you the longest possible shelf life, right? Other parameters I learned about in the process was flushing bags with nitrogen, right? You see a bag of chips, imported chips or whatever it is, you see a lot of air in it, whether it's in Katieborg or anything, and you think it's just air, but it's not. It's nitrogen being flushed in. And essentially what that does is, the air is made up of mostly nitrogen and then oxygen and some other stuff. I'm not too sure, but essentially you want to fill it. You get pure nitrogen. Sometimes they are nitrogen generators. Essentially what they'll do is they'll take the air around us and they'll remove the oxygen in it and they'll give you a pure form of nitrogen, which you flush into the packs and it preserves the product. It keeps it shelf stable. It prevents oxidation. It prevents rancidity. But those are some of the elements, the key elements that went to this particular product, right? And as I'm talking about this, I'm talking about it in the plantain chip concept, but that's really what you think about when you're creating the product, right? When you think about the features, right? You highlight the features and then you think about how you go about achieving those features and research it, right? You research the process. And that's really what I did. Coming back to the question around, how did I do that without being an engineer? I just sort of asked the right questions, found some research papers, and it was exciting. The prospect of creating this was exciting. So I leaned into it and tested the process out. And then I started thinking about, what equipment do I need in order to implement that process at the scale and at the capacity that I want, right? So first I think about what sorts of equipment I need. Is your process involving grinding? Is it involving baking? Is it involving frying? And you start looking for equipment. You search using the right words, right? So as an example, rather than saying large grinder or large blender, then you say you want a commercial blender, you want an industrial blender. Then it starts bringing things up. As it brings the things up, you look at the capacities for it and you look at the capacity that fits your pocket, but also fits the level to which you want to start engaging the markets, right? You might say, I just need 1,000 packs per month. Then you see what can give you just enough capacity for it. Don't over-design. Don't over-design. Those are some of the mistakes I made starting off. Get exactly what it is that you need and make sure you've seen at least videos of it doing what it is, right? So, sorry, I was just getting a call. So that's pretty much how the process went. One of the things I'll really advise is that as you're going about this, you need to start writing down as much as possible, establishing the process and making it. You need to really start noting how you're going to go about this. That's one of the things that I think businesses forget, is that if you're building a business, that it's an organization, right? That's the whole word around it is organization. And one of the critical things is codifying or documenting your policy and your process in every single thing that you do, right? You do it on your manufacturing front, you do it on your accounting front, you do it on your health, food safety and quality front. Every aspect of your business, as you go along, you should do it. And that's one of the things that we did quite well on the manufacturing front to start off, because that was really the focus. But we delayed a bit doing that on our more sort of administrative stuff, which are absolutely essential. in your business. When you talk about your finance department, your accounting, your marketing, everything should have the rules that govern it, right? And that is one thing I wish I had taken into consideration much earlier on. Like I said, we did it well for the manufacturing aspect of things. But for the other aspects around our accounting and stuff, we had established processes, which were what companies were typically using. But if you don't have it documented, you cannot govern. And that's really what, at a certain level, as you guys, as the business grows, that's what really it becomes. It's about governing. And mind you, this isn't just for a senior management, right? It's not a senior management conversation. Even if you become a food safety manager or assistant manager, what's really going to be important is how well you codify and how well you document the rules around how you want your space to be engaged, the activities around it. So I'm just sharing that and stressing that now because it is one of the major things that we are working through now so that we strengthen our foundation to grow. Right. So that's a bit of the process flow around that, around how the snack concept came about and how we went about figuring out the process, how we sourced equipment. I sourced equipment from outside. I used Alibaba a lot. I used some other suppliers. You just look through videos, you look through validation that they can send to you, right? So videos, other customer reviews, some of them have dealt with customers on the continent, you can speak to them. And that's really what it is. That after that, you just need to roll the die and make the bet, knowing that you have a plan in place to get it done. And of course, there are the many other aspects of the business, setting up your organization, setting up your team, setting up your go-to-market strategy. I haven't written all of that out. I focused a bit more here on the process of creating a product because that's really my specialty. That's what I really love is product innovation, research and development more than anything else. But you certainly need to make sure those other elements of the business have been well thought out and have been well planned out as well. So yeah, I think Paul, for now, that's what I have. I will pass the baton over. You guys can ask any questions you want that we can dig into. But that's about it from my front for now.
Thank you very much, Jamie. So guys, feel free to ask him any questions. I think the other cohorts had the privilege of going to his factory to taste the product and enjoy some of the snacks and to also interact with the staff. But this is a virtual session, but feel free to ask any question about entrepreneurship, about his personal journey, anything that you want to ask. We still have some time on our hands, I think about 25 minutes. So feel free to ask any question that you like.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a question.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so I want to find out in processing of their product, do they put into consideration some quality control measure that ensures that there's no contamination in the product that they bring to the market?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good question. So there certainly is, there are. From the get-go, of course, you have to do the regular, the statutory stuff, the regulatory stuff with FDA. So of course we have the FDA requirements in place. But in addition to that, what we actually went for, which was extremely difficult but extremely valuable, is FSSC 22000, which is a combination of ISO, HACCP, and a few other things. It's actually a very difficult standard to achieve because it touches on every aspect of the business. I think that was what was very beneficial about it too, is that it forced us to look at areas of the business that maybe we wouldn't have enjoyed or have done right away. So we spent a good time and continue to spend a good time working through process improvement. It's a continuous process. It never stops. It never stops. When you start, you want to come in with the best possible product you can so that the brand is not damaged. but you will face some challenges. What you really are hoping for is the markets and the community that you are engaging will afford you enough ball drops whilst you figure it out. But you cannot, there's a limit to how much you can do that, of course, right? Because your brand equity keeps going down. People can't spend money and get a bad product. But I think if your product is really innovative, is exciting, the story is resonating with people and they feel it, they want to see you succeed, the more likely they will give you some space in those moments. I think we've done a very good job, but I'm sure we've had, not I'm sure, I know we have had incidents here and there that we've rectified through the years, over these past 6 years. And one of the things that I am actually super focused on now is on how we view our process and close even further gaps, right? So we have the FSSC in place. We have all these systems and policies on hygiene, on quality, on safety, but the process of improving the product, improving the quality, improving the process, it never stops. It never ever stops. And that's why it's important to codify these things and document them, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're engaging financiers, if you're engaging, at any point in time, you want to partner with someone or you want to sell your company or anything of that sort, what they're really looking to buy more often than not, and what really has value is those systems that you've established, right? And that in essence is almost your intellectual property, going through that process to say, look, I've built an organization and I can step away from it and it will be running. I can move everybody out of it and bring people in, and everything is written down in such a way that the business can be understood. So I took the long route to answer your question, but yes, we do have those systems in place.
So I also wanted to add to that, like, has there been an instance where maybe your product didn't meet the standard required by the institutions? And if it happens, that what collective action did you put in place to? Because I know that there are most companies and industry which are into processing production of this, but normally because of the amount of money that this institution require from them, they don't normally take into consideration the product that they bring on market, because most of the time consumers keep on complaining about and the compromise in the
yeah I get you
they buy.
Hello.
All right.
Okay, I missed the last part.
Yeah, boss, I can hear you.
Okay, I missed. Can you please? I
Hello?
caught some of what you shared, but can you ask the question just one more time?
Where your institution or company has failed to the higher standard required by the monitoring institution. And when it happens that way, what collective action did you put in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again?
Well, got it. So I mean, it depends on the incident, right? But once an incident comes, even if it comes from trade, sometimes it will come from trade. Our salesperson will go to trade and find that, a few a few bags that he found at a particular store, the packs were not sealing well, right? So if he identifies something like that, he will share with us the lot number. We'll do a root cause analysis. Of course, that's the food safety team. So they'll do a root cause analysis and they'll check retention stock we keep there, see how it was produced, look at all the different elements within that batch. What was the packaging? What are the packaging documentation saying? So the controls we have for packaging, what was it saying? Was the temperature on the sealer low? Was this? So they'll do a root cause analysis. And after that, we will put whatever corrective action is supposed to be put in place. It's usually like that. If it's on a mass scale, then we will have a recall. We've actually had a recall 1 or 2 times in our earlier days, especially. So maybe early on, we might have an incident with a product. It's usually not a safety incident, fortunately, but it's usually quality related. And if that happens, for us, we don't take the chance. We quickly withdraw things from the market as quickly as you can so that you have good stock. Yeah.
Okay, I get you. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Jamie. I saw a question from Asaminua in the comment section. A really cool question, maybe. You can look at it.
Okay, I'm going to take a look now. Oh, wow. Okay, so I haven't been viewing the chats. Now, can you share a bit about startup capital investments? Were you a part of any entrepreneurship company? Has your business growth purely been from revenue and sales? Okay, good question. So startup capital, which is, I got to be honest with you guys, is one of the most difficult things in our space here. I know that. I think I have been lucky in some ways on that front, but that luck has also been to my detriment in some ways. It's forced me to learn some pretty difficult lessons. So when I started a business, I started it with savings from my old job. I had saved some bonus checks that I had. And when I filed my taxes, I got some returns on that. So I saved that up. The budget I prepared was, guys, just 1 second. Somebody has been calling like several times over. Please let me just let them understand that I'm on a call. Just 2 minutes or less. In terms of startup capital, so I started with savings, bonus checks. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So bonus checks, tax returns. And when I set the budget, I thought that what I had was enough. That's another thing I always say. When you start the business, what you think is enough, you will probably need several times. I mean, almost double whatever you budget you think you'll need. And I was just lucky I could rely on some family to also give me some funds towards it. When I was leaving the last business that I worked for, my old boss also gave me something towards it. I had been a good member of his team, fortunately. So that's how I got the business started. I didn't seek out any outside funding to start. After 2 years, we had sort of demonstrated that we had a good business. That's always the most difficult part, right? Is demonstrating that you have not just a concept, but it is proved, right, in the market. After those 2 years, I was able to go back to the table, actually to my old boss, to seek him out as an investor. They had at that time started investing in a lot of women-owned businesses of color, owned by Black people and other colored people. So I reached out to him. They were excited about the opportunity, and they came on as an investor. They actually invested in us to allow us to move from that small house in Hacho. So when we started, I just rented a house in Hacho. We repurposed the house into a small factory, bought a small group of equipment that I knew will allow us to have a decent sized business, but not necessarily a scale business at all, right? So we moved from the house in Hacho that we were renting into a purpose-built space that we actually constructed. And, you know, I was lucky because that was the first person I reached out to, and he came through with some capital. But, you know, the challenges there too was because of the level of familiarity that was there, certain structures and approaches that we should have taken weren't in good order, right? And so I think as you guys think about capital, I'm not going to be here and say I know or I have a lot of experience in getting funding from outside sources so much. But one thing I will say is if you decide to work with somebody that is close or anybody that you know, do not make the mistake of not putting down what is governing that agreement or governing that partnership. That's one of the mistakes sometimes we make. We're excited about things, we trust people. And it's not to say that you don't trust the person, but if you don't have things written down and you leave gray areas, it can always create some challenges down the line. And so for me, I think that was one of the positives, but also one of the negatives about it. And it also made me very reliant on that particular investor because I became, I didn't want the distraction of having to go out to look out for funds. It's very, very difficult, and it takes time, right? So I really wanted to focus on building the business, and that was why I leaned into this particular partner. In terms of other resources, I have applied for grants twice here, and I was lucky enough to get it on those occasions with GEA, with Ghana Enterprise Association. We went through a whole due diligence around it. I took some KPMG accelerator program that they had as well, capacity building program. And there are a lot of these, there are a wealth of these. I think before you start any business by yourself or with anybody, as you're planning the business, spend a good amount of time creating a catalog of all of these opportunities. Usually they are recurring, maybe to be once or twice a year, but list all of them down. List all of them down. Try to do as much research as you can around them. Know which one is lower hanging fruit and more realistic to get. You can read in forums and you can get personal contacts to also advise on what has worked for them. Some might be a waste of your time, others will be very valuable. So for me, the GA program was one. I also applied to an international one as well in the US with the retailer called Target. They had an accelerator program that I was a part of. But in terms of funding, not so much so. It was really just capacity building. So, sorry, I'm going left, right, and center. I don't think I had so much specifically on funding, but yeah, that's what I have on that front. I hope that is somewhat helpful. Great. It's glad to hear. Okay. Well, so anything else for me? You guys are quiet, so
I think there's one more question there, and then maybe we can wind up. Yes.
sounds good. Sounds good.
Yes, there's one more question in the comment section.
Sure.
Were there times when you felt like giving up? What kept you going? Yeah.
Let's know that. I got to be honest with you, there's never been a time that I have felt like giving up, thank God. But there have been many a time where I'm like, damn, like what have I gotten myself into? But you sign up for it, going into it, you sign up for it. And I think the difference between an entrepreneur's journey and just a sort of a high-level executive, you can be an entrepreneur and eventually be an executive as well. But as an entrepreneur, you're building, it's a journey. And once you are keeping your head above water, once your head is above water, you just got to be grateful, right? You could be making losses, not yet profitable, but you see a trajectory and your head is above water. You live every day to improve. I think for me, once that is there, I'm in good form. There are difficult times, there are depressive times, of course. But as I think about the trajectory of the business, the opportunity that is there, the fact that if it was easy or if it wasn't challenging, everybody would be doing it. And the fact that it is a journey, right? Every aspect and every moment of it, for me, it's like going on a journey. Depends on if you're spiritual or not, but almost like going on a journey with God. It's going to test different aspects of who you are, your grit, your belief, your faith. It's going to test a lot of things. And I'm not saying I move blindly. I keep a very, very realistic expectation, meaning that like I said, you look at the trajectory of the business. If things are just sinking, you need to know when to cut your losses. And by God's grace, we haven't hit that at all. The trajectory is very positive. And if we keep doing the right things, even though things are very difficult, if you raise the hood of the business, everything looks beautiful to everyone outside. When you raise the hood, it is messy, but you just pray for another day, work for another day to keep improving every single day. You improve very, very intentionally, right? And I think the final thing I will add to that, which is what I've said to every cohort that I've spoken with, is knowing why you're doing what you're doing, right? I always say, like, know your why. I think, especially in the earlier days, that is what is going to keep you going. When things are very difficult and you're trying to believe in something that hasn't yet fully come to fruition, you need to have a strong why and a strong reason for doing it. And I find that the strongest why is often embedded in community. It's if you can find a why that is not just about yourself, and it has to do with your community, at the end of the day, you feel you are fighting the good fight, right? So you know that the right support should be behind you, right? So I think knowing your why is what will keep you going, as well. So that's, yeah, I would say that's my answer for that.
Thank you, Jamie. And then Rita, please, I see your hand is up. Do you want to say something? You can either speak or leave a comment in the comment section.
Yes, Paul, I would want to ask a question.
Hi, Rita, go ahead.
Okay, so for me, let me say, I'm just curious about how the name came about. I mean, I get the idea behind the brand and we embracing our own ingredients and all that. But since you're fluent in Ghana, why not a Ghana name? Why didn't we have something like Back to the Snacks? You know, why did you decide to name it Sankofa? What informed the name Sankofa?
That's a good question. And that sort of shifts into the marketing space of things. I think it was because of the feeling I think that name brings to everybody collectively, and how meaningful that name has been for us, but also for the diaspora, right? For everybody. It's a name that has been a part of our shared or our collective Black culture for a while. And in Ghana, everybody understands it. And it encapsulates what we were trying to do, which is really to take the best of tradition and to take the best of the past to go to the future, right? So it literally defined what we were doing. And people used to ask, well, there's so many Sankofers, and how will people be able to distinguish? For me, I just felt nobody had truly owned that name yet, right? Right now, there's us, there's also Sankofa Spices. But I still think that there is room to really own that brand name, especially in the snack space. And that name had just a very powerful meaning that I thought was universally relevant. You know, I'm part Ghana, but to be honest, I couldn't think of a word that is a proverb. Sankofa is literally a proverb, but it's a single word proverb, right? So it all just sort of came together in that way. Yeah, it just made sense that way. Rita, I hope that answers the question a bit. Hello?
It does. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, great. I think our time is up. Jamie, thank you very much for spending your Saturday to share this with us. It's been super valuable, and we are really grateful. It's just too bad the third cohort couldn't get to visit your place, but they would have loved it. And if you need any snacks for your picnic, any event, just either contact GFM, or you can go on Sankofa website, and then you can place an order.
Exactly. And if anybody wants to ask anything offline at some point, feel free to get my contact. You can. I'm wishing you guys the best. The one thing I also wanted to share here is that the conversation has been around entrepreneurs starting businesses. It's amazing. The time is right for that. And I'm excited for everybody that wants to go into that journey. But I will also share something that has really dawned on me more recently as we reorganize our team to really grow the business, right? And that is the importance of specialized talent, right? people that have been studying in a particular field for some time and have garnered experience around it, whether it's R&D, whether it's production management, whether it is food safety, whatever field you decide to go in, know that you should give it your everything. If you decide not to start a business, you are just as important as the person starting the business, because it is impossible to scale a business without a very strong core team, right? So I'm saying that now because I see how my team, with the people that I started with, which were the people that believed in the earlier days, they had a lot of capacities like myself, have been great. But as the business grows, it is almost outgrowing some of us in certain ways. Some of us are having to move, and you're having to bring in people that are specialized and that have dedicated time to garner that experience. So I just want to say, as we're excited about founding businesses, go ahead and do that. But also remember, if you decide you're working for a company, choose a good company and utilize the time to learn very intentionally. Utilize it to learn very intentionally, especially at this age and at this time, so that you will be an insane asset for any business that you're going to be a part of, an insane team member to have on board. So that's the last piece of advice. I will leave you guys to it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Jamie. And this is really important for the youth because they're all seeking to start their careers in the food and agribusiness value chain. Like Sankofa, I think we have one cohort member with you. So this is really inspiring for them to hear this directly from you, a CEO who is managing one of these businesses, how important their skills would be in a setup like yours. So thank you for really leaving this nugget with them. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, guys.
And to the youth, thank you very much for joining this session. We have 6 more sessions from now to February, ending of February. So we'll share the links and I will keep you updated. But thank you for spending your Saturday. And we hope that you really took notes and you enjoyed the session. Have an amazing day. Right. Bye.